I'm Nick Westergaard, and this is On Brand, helping you tell your story. Geoff Cook's career took off the night he met MoMA's CMO and helped create the iconic MoMA QNS brand. Since then, he's shaped brands from MILK and NeueHouse to Times Talks, JFK Terminal 4, and the Prince Estate. Partner at Base, mentor at TechStars, and global culture expert, Geoff shares how bold branding can leave a lasting cultural impact. My interview with Geoff Cook is coming right up. But first, Geoff Cook, welcome to On Brand.
Thank you, Nick. Nice to be here.
So I have to ask, because it's the teaser that is in your bio of this night at MoMA that really sort of changed everything for you. In noting that as part of your own story, I guess, well, first of all, what is the story?
Let's see. The story probably started even before Base when I was at DKNY in its heyday. And it was, at that time, one of the hottest brands on the planet. And I think there I learned a couple of things. One, which was all about the international marketplace. So I was, at the time, director of the international men's division and tasked with making this tiny little national brand into a global one. And so that's really where I was traveling the world 9 months of the year and learning about these different markets around the world. I think the second thing that it really imparted upon me was really understanding human connection. And at the time, we were opening flagship stores and having lots of events. Donna was also the first one to put a coffee bar in a retail store, which seems sort of de rigueur today, but at the time was really novel. And so I really learned about human connection. It was during this time that I met my current partners through the Belgian fashion scene. So Base had existed in Brussels, and I left Donna Karan, invested in the company, and brought it to New York, and that was in 1999.
Go ahead.
And so since then, we have expanded to Melbourne and Geneva. So we have 4 physical offices. We have a digital, vertically integrated digital office, and are approaching 100 people.
Wow. Again, quite an inflection point there. So I wonder if you could talk a bit about on the MoMA side of things, the QNS influence and how that shaped your approach to connecting culture and business strategy and branding.
Yeah. So how that all happened is an interesting story to begin with. We had an early client, MILK, which has now become a worldwide powerhouse. But at the time, it started as a photo studio. We were a young agency, and we did a swap where we said, could we do some free work, and in return, we'll throw a party at one of your studios. And they said, we'll do you one better. We'll actually invite all of our crowd as well. And as they were the who's who, or they were, the cool kids in New York, they invited, I think it was about 1,000 people. And in the mix was the assistant of the assistant of the assistant to the CMO of MoMA, who came and said, MoMA's being rebuilt on 53rd Street. We're moving to a temporary location in Queens. I believe that there is a competition going on to brand that. I love your work. I'm going to introduce you to the CMO. And I said, thanks, kid. Go have a beer and enjoy yourself. And the next day I got a call from the CMO at MoMA who said, we've been in this process for about a month. You have a week. to submit your creative pitch. I called my partners in Brussels. They flew to New York. We worked 24/7, and the rest is history. So that's how we first got associated with MoMA. It's the job that really put base New York on the map. But I think it does touch upon our broader expertise in culture. It ties back all the way to the early work of Brussels, and now today, really working with, I would say, probably 30 to 40% of our work, large cultural institutions around the world, including the MFA in Boston, the Louis Vuitton Foundation in Paris, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Olympic Museum in Lausanne, and countless others. So it's really become a key pillar in our body of work.
You know, what got my attention about your bio is both the MoMA of it all, which is a place that means a lot to me, that I love, that I'm looking forward to visiting when I'm there next month, and but also, as you mentioned all of those places, JFK Terminal 4. So talk to me, make that jump from the world of MoMA to an airport terminal, because I would imagine as that kind of crossed your path, your inbox, it to me it seems different, but maybe it isn't.
Yeah, so it all started when we met the CEO of Terminal 4. I think it is important to understand that Terminal 4 is different than other airline terminals in America because it is privately held. It is owned by the Schiphol Group out of the Netherlands, and in early 2001, there was this great idea to privatize airline terminals in America, sell them off, and the cities would make lots of money. Um, and JFK Terminal 4 was the first one out of the gate, and then September 11th happened. And the government said, actually, let's not privatize the various terminals. So it today remains the only privately held terminal in America, which gave us a lot of leeway in terms of branding it and marketing it, in the sense that there wasn't a lot of bureaucratic red tape that we had to deal with. We were dealing with a private company. And the first thing that the CEO said to us is, we work really hard every day to make sure that our travelers are secure. And at the same time, travel's become really difficult. And so we would love a brand that not only reassures people that we are to be trusted and that we are safe, but that maybe can make their trip a little bit better. And so that really guided the work, where we said, on one hand, we want to guide, and on the other hand, we want to delight. And with those two ideas, we actually came up with the brand that you see today and so many people have experienced as they fly into New York. And that is a brand that doesn't look like aviation branding. It's not militaristic with the main colors of navy blue and gunmetal. It's very approachable. It's very light and airy. And that was all done with that purpose in mind of making Voyager's travels a little bit better. But to your broader question of how is our work similar, and we do have a very broad portfolio that ranges from fashion to beauty, hospitality, culture, and even airports. I do think that something that I am thinking a lot about today is how can our work, in an era where, the world is increasingly fragmented. And just last year, even the Attorney General came out and declared a loneliness epidemic in America. Right. One thing that I found fascinating was, as people were upgrading from ChatGPT 4 to 5, and feeling a little saddened by that upgrade, and when asked why, they said, because we felt like we've lost a friend. And I found that very, very peculiar, that by making an AI less sycophantic and more matter of fact that people actually felt that they lost a friend. So one thing that I'm thinking a lot about is how do we go beyond the work that we do day to day, sort of strategy, identity, digital, but really think about it more as world building and building the worlds of brands. And this may sound very lofty, but all for the end goal of bringing people together. How can we as a company use our work to foster human connection in a time when people are more and more going into their respective corners? And so I think if we look at MoMA, if we look at something like JFK Terminal 4, a smaller project like 12, our recent matcha project that you've heard a lot about on Bond Street, or Birkenstock, the through line through a lot of these brands that we're working with is how do we create these worlds with the end goal of bringing people together and fostering human connection.
On Brand will be right back after this. Now, back to the show. So you mentioned AI earlier and the loss of ChatGPT 4. In Design Week, Base shared its approach to AI, focusing on transparency, on human oversight, and protecting client IP at a time when everything seems there's this balance of excitement and fear around AI. How do you personally and as an organizational leader think about setting guardrails?
So I think people have the are right to feel both excited and wary by AI. On one hand, we're in the early innings. It's the equivalent of the early days of the internet when someone would pull a photograph of the internet and throw it into a job, and then 3 months later have their wrist slapped because that photograph actually, there were rights involved and we weren't free to use that. But at the time, we were all learning and people didn't know where the guardrails were. So I think with my partner Mirik and our in-house tech and innovation team, we're really looking to lead the industry toward setting various guardrails. So that's number one. Number two, and we're hearing this from all aspects of business, we all understand that AI is a tool. It is not a replacement. And so I think a lot of people have already figured that out, that by using it as a replacement, the results that you would expect follow. And when we use it as a tool with human oversight, the results can be really compelling. It can lead to certain efficiencies. But at the end of the day, whatever we're using it for, and that could be, writing papers or generating creative work, at the end of the day, it still requires our oversight in order to get the best out of it, the best results.
As we were, even especially with examples of work like JFK Terminal 4, when you look to a creative agency, creative professionals to do something that is unique and different from everything else in certain spaces. One risk that the Design Week article mentions is homogenization, that AI might make everything get us kind of looking, sounding alike. How do we ensure that we're both championing AI accordingly, but also not heading down that path where the very thing that creatives are looked for is kind of sanded out like a rough edge?
We are heading down both paths, meaning the middle is going to get squeezed in the sense that those that are producing work that is perhaps lacking that creative spark are in danger of being supplemented or replaced by AI. the reason that the work that AI produces can be homogeneous is because it is drawing from existing sources. So, in the same way, I'm sure you heard about how there was a backlash against a certain fashion brand for using AI models,
Mm.
where it was pulling from existing traits of women and sort of painting the picture of the perfect model. At the end of the day, people don't want a Nirvana song that could have been created by Nirvana, but just sounds like a watered down Nirvana song. They actually want the creative spark behind the Nirvana song that makes it new and exciting and different, not something that is drawn from the parameters of the past. And I think the same is true of our work. AI is a great tool, but at the end of the day, the concepts and that creative spark on the front end is going to continue to be what produces exceptional work. And we're talking about this across all industries. I'm talking about this with my friends in LA, where they're talking about scripts that are being developed by algorithms and films being shot using AI, leading to a product that, quote unquote, the masses want. And that may satisfy a certain sliver of the demographic. But at the end of the day, creativity always wins.
That's really interesting. And you talk about kind of how people are talking about it. I feel like there's levels of this conversation happening too. And in levels of work in the business, I wonder about talking to clients about AI, because having kind of ridden the social media wave, I know that we get in these phases where people are just hungry to kind of sprinkle some, at that time, social media, and now it feels like I want to know that it's AI infused or or something. And there is that excitement there, but how do you talk about it, capture the excitement, but also bring that creative spark that's a very important part of your work and a very important part of your vision for your work as well?
I think the first order of business with clients is simply a reality check. So we have gotten contracts that have said you will not use AI in your work. And today that's like saying you will not use the internet in your work. It is so pervasive at this point, where you have our developers that are finishing or writing code with the assistance of AI. You have our project managers that are checking contracts, doing first checks before it's sent to our attorneys using AI. The fact of the matter is in such a short period of time, AI is in every aspect of our business. It is nearly impossible to avoid using AI today. So I think the first order of business is having a very frank and transparent conversation with the clients about that very fact. And then from there, having them understand that it is a tool, it is not a replacement, and it is simply to make our work faster, potentially cheaper, although not necessarily better, and but not as a replacement, not something that exposes them to any sort of infringement or lawsuits. That everything that is done with the utmost care, and so on and so forth. And I think by having those conversations, the clients that we have talked to about it are very reassured.
That's a really great comparison too, about it would be the equivalent of not using the internet. But I think kind of that's our first, when we think, oh, we got to do something about it. I think the first wave is lock it down and don't. And I don't know that, like you said, is incredibly realistic. As a TechStars mentor, I want to talk a little bit about, we've talked about branding big things, but in shifting to early stage companies, what are some of the common branding missteps you see, and how do you help get those early stage companies on the right track?
So my role with Techstars and other young companies actually starts even broader than a brand consultant and really begins almost as a business consultant. And so specific to tech companies, the first thing I simply do is ask if this company has legs or if this company is presenting a solution and looking for a problem to solve.
Mm.
And so the first order of business, especially with young tech companies, that I often ask is to really understand, is there an existing solution offline? And is what they are proposing online a better solution than what exists offline? That's sort of my first check. And so, for example, by way of example, let's say eBay. eBay were a startup back in the day. You would ask yourself, okay, are there flea markets or are there marketplaces? Yes. Is this a better mousetrap than what exists? Potentially, yes. Okay, they have a shot. So the first thing is really understanding the business model and if it is set up for success. I think the second thing is is that branding only makes a good product better. It can't make a bad product good. So that's why we're always looking at, after, does the business model have legs, then looking at the product itself and understanding, are they executing well? Do they have a good team in place, and so on and so forth. And I think the third thing from there is really to have young companies understand that on that good product and with that good business model, you can go a very long way. And it is essential to preserving cash early on and getting as far as they can before they invest heavily in brands. So the things that I'm talking about with young companies is, how can we preserve that cash and do what is necessary to get the company to a certain level? And that, I think, already really will carry them a good way.
So we've talked about brands, cultural moments. As we look ahead to, we're here in Q4 with a new year ahead, and thinking about the next frontier for branding. What do you see as the biggest opportunity for meaningful impact?
So it's really what I touched on before, pertaining to world building
Mm.
and fostering human connection. I think that the greatest opportunity is, when I talk about world building, it can be in the physical or digital space, but let's start physically. A thing that I keep asking myself is, we need to do what the robots can't. There will be a lot in the not too distant future uh, that is done by machines. I think the greatest opportunity in our world is to think about, how do we extend our work into largely the physical realm in order to create really compelling experiences that encourage people to come together as human beings. I think that, for me, is the greatest opportunity. And I think what's exciting about that for agencies like ours is that we can't do it by ourselves. And so, for example, when we created the matcha brand 12, we actually went to the owners and said, you're tasking us with the strategy, the identity, the digital, the packaging, the stuff we do every day. We would like you to give us the responsibility, the authority to actually bring in collaborators in order to realize this world, in order to give it to realize its greatest potential. And so we, in addition to our core body of work, also talked to them about who we thought would be the best architect for the job, Sigu out of Paris. We talked to them about the best industrial designer for the job for the custom packaging, and we selected Michael Young out of Today Tokyo. And public relations and so on, all for the end goal of creating a very coherent, really compelling, exciting end result, with each participant, world-class participant, playing their role to the best of their abilities to create something that really, at the end of the day, brings people together. And it worked. And it worked because we've now, with 12, been open about 4 months, 5 months. The average wait time for a matcha latte at $7 is 2 hours. without any advertising or marketing. You have the line going down Bond Street, around the corner to the Bowery, and around the corner yet again to Great Jones. And I think it's because that level of design integrity and intention and the experience, the world of 12 that we created, I think people are excited by that and they want to be a part of that. And so how do we take this approach of world building and apply it to everything that we do? I think that's a really great opportunity for agencies like ours.
Well, that story makes me smile, and it is now my turn to get to ask you, Geoff, for a brand that has made you smile recently.
Yeah, I think that On is doing an amazing job. And for the same reasons that I just mentioned, when you walk into an On store, you really understand the world of On. The product is coherent, the technology is coherent. The way they've designed the stores is really compelling in terms of thinking of new ways to present the shoes with the stock in the back. It is of a piece. It comes as no surprise that they are based in Zurich. It all feels very Swiss. And yet, amongst that Swiss rigor, you have campaigns like Zendaya in Outer Space that are surprising and fresh and a completely different take on what most athletic wear brands are doing today. So I think they've done a really, really good job at creating their world and a really good job at thinking about the evergreen side of the brand and then thinking about the punctual, surprising side of the brand that engages the general public.
Smiles abound. Geoff, where can folks go to learn more about who you are and what you do?
So the best place is basedesign.com. I would also take a look at our Instagram and LinkedIn feeds. And more of our very talented group are going to conferences and things around the world. So keep a lookout for us in various cities.
Awesome. Well, we will link up to all of that in our show notes, which folks can find at onbrandpodcast.com. Geoff, thanks for being on brand with us.
Thank you so much.
On Brand is part of the Marketing Podcast Network. If you like what you're hearing, if we've made you smile, you can always listen free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite platform may be. And please take a moment and rate and review the podcast to help others find the show. Until next week, I'm Nick Westergaard, and I'll see you on the internet.